And Ausman here, but not the Ausman, although he is here too.
G'day.
Nacho here, joining my mate Ausman for a rather important message. There's no two ways about it. This is gonna be heavy hitting and certainly will trigger people's emotions, whether you have experienced this kind of abuse or not.
This is not going to be a good topic, and if you are squeamish at all during any other part of this video, I suggest you turn it off immediately.
Given the content, insert shilling here to get it out of the way, because there won't be room for it later.
Ditto. You're already here, so you know what to do.
When I was about 12 years old, I was raped by someone I thought was my mate.
We need to talk about this. Well, now that the introduction is out of the way, it's time to get very serious. I have a lot of struggles saying this word, as I have been recently re-exposed to this horrible experience. So much so that I almost had entirely buried it in my subconsciousness. So, for me to say the R word is going to be a bit of an impossibility for me at this stage. So, I'm going to replace the R word, in my case, with emasculation, or a variant of such.
I've only ever told a handful of people in my life about this. It isn't something that comes to mind often because I too had it buried deep. But that's not where it belongs. It's something that needs to be exposed and understood. In this day where the Me Too movement has gained such rightful strength, men should not be ashamed to stand up and tell their stories and bust through the stereotypes of what a man should be.
Let's start with the multitude of societal expectations that are placed upon a male at a very, very early age, sometimes as early as 6 years old in certain situations. There is a significant online presence already with a lot of the expectations that society places on a female, but when it comes to a male, it is a bit more narrow, if I should say so myself. Men in society are expected to be strong, stone-hearted, willful, in control. Society doesn't expect men to be emotionally or mentally equivalent to a female, and that comes from many decades, no, centuries of sexist and ignorant practices that males have enforced within their own society. So when it comes to the acknowledgement of males being used against their will, or abused physically, emotionally, or mentally abused, and taken advantage of, it can be considered a significant sign of weakness or lack of will. It can be seen as that particular male may have done something wrong to get into that situation, and it is his fault. At least, that is what happens in the mind of the male victim.
This social stigma is real, and it holds men back from even speaking up about this, even with their closest friends or family, let alone seeking any legal justice. Man up. Get over it. Oh, you enjoyed it. This attitude cannot stand. There's also a major stigma about letting your emotions out as a male. As a male, a lot of your mates, as we call them here down under, don't understand or have been brought up with this social stereotype that males shouldn't express their feelings, or let tears fall, or allow themselves to be exposed in any emotional or mental way to another person.
This is what we call social repression. So when it comes to exposing yourself like this, even to someone that is paid to listen and help you through it, it doesn't seem right. It feels as if you are weak or pathetic or somehow at fault. It feels as if you have done the wrong, and that's just not right. I have very vague memories of this, All I know is that it happened when I was 3 years old, and my mother and family were out at various places. It was my father, go figure, whom I have since forgiven and befriended before his passing in 2016. At that time, and until I was around 13 or 14, I did not know what had happened to me was in fact him taking physical advantage of me. I had to be told by my schoolmates. Little to no surprise, this absolutely knocked me for 6 with a 50-foot pole, meaning that it completely sideswiped me. After I had learned this, it took me 2 to 3 weeks before I was able to confront my father, and, well, in true Aussie fashion, when you get pissed, you get into a scrap. This one was particularly nasty. I won't get into too many details, but I will say that there was blood, and that I will say that my nana, who was a military nurse, had to get involved to patch up the aftermath. 15 years of repression suddenly boiling up, and having to be told by someone else that this is what happened to you doesn't few numbers on your head. I can promise you that.
When I was a kid, I guess around 12, because I honestly have no idea, we didn't celebrate birthdays, I would always have sleepovers with my mates. We had a sweet cubby house Dad built us, and us kids decked it out with the lighting and fans or heaters. It was pretty cool. But of all the good times with good mates, there was one bad time with one guy who until that day I thought was my mate. I don't particularly want to detail what happened, but it wasn't the most pleasant experience to say the least. In fact, that experience, as a vulnerable, innocent child, changed me in a rather significant way.
In true teenager fashion, after having confronted my father, the effects it had on me were significant. The only thing I knew was to bottle it up, hide it, get rid of it, move past it, and forget it even happened. It has only been until recently, in the last 2 weeks, that I've been able to revisit it again. And that is 17 years later that I've started to experience the true side effects after digging it back up. Confusion, sadness, weakness, upset, shame, guilt, it all tears at the very fabric of who you are. And you start to question every little decision you've made, or every choice you've made. If you let it, these side effects can destroy you. And for those 17 years of my life, it did. Silently. To the point that I didn't even know who I was. I had forgotten who the real Ausman was. Even now, I only know a shadow of who I am, of who I used to be. It's not fun at all.
Going through what I did messed me up. My biggest regret is how much it confused me about my own sexuality. Did that make me gay? Is that what my parents would think if I told them? And then how would that go down with being a JW? I grew to have a distrust of gay people because of this experience, and I don't think that guy was even gay. Over time I realized my bias and wanted it to not be the reason I figure myself as straight. So for lack of better words, I tried being bi, but that didn't last. Got as far as kissing a guy and realized, yeah, no, that not for me. But he was a sweetie. At least I didn't let myself remain confused about my sexuality because of the abuse. He was meant to be my friend. Granted, I trusted people too easy back then, but this has led me to have a lot of trouble trusting people, and I walled off anyone who could have really been a real friend to me for a very long time. I still have trouble letting people get too close. I kept this mostly secret, and I still do, which made it too easy to repress and pretend it just didn't happen. But it did happen, and I'm not ashamed to tell you. I want to see more men stand up and tell their stories. I want to see more men stand by their mate and let them cry when they need to cry and be that ear when they need to talk. I want to see women accept that men can be emotional, and men not to be afraid to express their emotions. Man, woman, and anything else, we're human. We feel. We hurt. We need love and acceptance for who we are, not just for what is expected.
Damn fucking straight, Noddy. What I hope is that the male audience in this situation understands that repression can be emotionally and mentally fatal. It can really mess you up and send you sideways for quite possibly decades unless you get it sorted and talk to someone. It may feel like it, but there is no shame or guilt in doing so. You don't have to tell your mates, or your family, or anyone that you are not comfortable with. And it can take you months, or even a year or two, to find the right psychologist, or psychiatrist, or someone that you feel comfortable with. Or, it could take you mere moments. It all comes down to the matter of honesty. And I'm not talking about the honesty towards others, because that will happen when it wants to happen. I'm talking about honesty within yourself. Are you comfortable enough with this person? Do you feel the right vibes? Is this the right time? Those are all questions that you have to ask yourself. My advice? Don't rush it. If you have experienced this, it will take time to process. And it will take time to process it enough to the levels of wanting to talk to someone about it. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There has to be a when. Because if there isn't, it could seriously send you around the bend, and not in a very nice way. My advice is to be honest with yourself before being honest with other people. You come first. Everything else is secondary. And please, for the love of fuck, please ignore the societal pressures on you. Please ignore them. You don't have to conform to a specific standards. Standards are never straight. Everyone is different. You are no exception. I just want to give a huge thanks to my friend, NotJah Witness, for participating in this video. Thank you, Noddy.
That's alright, mate. Cheers for having me on.
I'll see you motherfuckers later.
All I wanna do is fly.